Hello everyone, welcome back to another video into our channel, and today we'll be presenting the Darien Gap. America and South America are widely considered to be completely separate continents, but they are technically connected by land to one another across the narrow isthmus of Panama, which has led some people to consider the Americas together as a single giant continent for thousands of years. Now, people have been walking across the Isthmus of Panama between the two halves of America, but contrary to what you might think, if you live in the US or Canada today and you type directions to Buenos Aires in Google Maps, you'll just end up getting an error message. In fact, you'll get an error message if you type directions to anywhere in South America, because it's currently impossible to actually drive there despite it being actually connected by land. The only way that North Americans and South Americans can visit one another is by air or by sea. And the reason why that's the case is all because of this tiny little piece of land called the Darien Gap. Allow me to explain why Europe, Africa, and Asia are similar to the Americas and that they're each considered separate continents despite them all being connected with one another by land. However, you can actually drive between all of these three continents, and that's never been possible in the Americas since a long time. But don't you have a single worry, because the Darien Gap can be crossed by two different ways of transport. The first one being using the plane, which is a costly solution, and a better alternative for this is using the boat. As you can see, many migrants choose this option because it's the most safest, fastest, and cheapest way to go. And others prefer to use the most extreme way and free way, that is to go by foot in the jungle. There are 22 sovereign nations that exist in the Americas that are all connected with one another by land. So in the early 20th century, a movement began forming to build a system of highways that will connect all 22 of these nations together for the first time and allow people and goods to be driven across them for a period of decades. That system of highways was constructed and became known as the Pan-American Highway, but like an annoying computer update, it's been stuck in 99% completion. As you can see, for decades this system wasn't completed. Only 1% isn't completed, which means that this 1% is currently located in the Panama jungle, which is considered to be the Darien Gap. The Darien Gap is a long, wide forest that hybrids dense jungle that's covered for 200 kilometers. And this causes a huge problem to the continuation to the Panaman highway system. South America, the 1% of the highway that isn't finished through is probably at the most critical possible point here on the border between Panama and Colombia. The highway stretches all the way from Prudhoe Bay in Alaska and abruptly ends here at Yaviza, Panama, while on the other side it stretches the way from Via Argentina. It stretches all the way before ending here at Turbo, Colombia. The so-called Darien Gap in between Yaviza and Chocó is only 100 kilometers wide. As the crowd flies, and a result, there are no roads that connect Panama with Colombia, which means that it's currently also impossible to drive between North America and South America. You'd think that building a highway would be fairly easy, though. So why hasn't this happened? Well, it's mostly because this 100 kilometer stretch of land isn't notoriously difficult to develop anything for starters. The entire gap is covered with incredibly thick rainforest jungles, swamps, and mountains, which are all incredibly detrimental to road construction and transportation. In order for me to put into perspective how massively difficult this terrain is, let me tell you the story of the first people who successfully managed to drive through the gap entirely overland. They used the CJ Wrangler in 1985 to travel 201 kilometers across the jungle, and it took them 741 days to get across to the other side, meaning that on average they were only capable of driving 270 meters per day. Though the jungle, there's also lots of terrible tropical disease here that make working through the jungle a nightmare for construction workers. Consider the construction of Panama Canal a little over a century ago in the same vicinity of the Darien Gap. 28,000 workers died here in Panama constructing the canal due to tropical diseases, and over 12,000 more workers died back in the 1850s and 60s constructing the canal's precursor, the Panama Railway. Though here is inherently dangerous, difficult, and immensely expensive because of the region's terribly rugged geography, but that's not entirely the only reason why roads hasn't ever been built here. Expensive roads have been built across even harsher environments before, but here on the Panama-Colombia border there's a lot of political resistance to building a road that connects the two countries as well. For starters, at this point, foot and mouth disease is still a common element among cattle in South America, but it's been completely eradicated in Central and North America ever since the 1950s. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the absence of any roads or paths across the Darien Gap has prevented infected South American cows from moving and spreading the disease into North America. So a lot of cattle ranchers and farmers in the various countries up here are pretty opposed to building the road further. There is massive resistance amongst several indigenous peoples that lives in the area of the Darien Gap, who believe that the highway built through the lands will disrupt or even ruin their way of life. But the biggest problem that any potential highway here faces is the massive local environmental damage that it will cause to a delicate ecosystem. The Darien Gap is a pristine and almost untouched wildlife area at present day, and the construction of a massive intercontinental highway right through the middle of it will obviously disrupt that. A highway that technically go into construction once in 1971 and then again in 1992, but it was killed both times by damning environmental damage reports. However, there have been some ideas peddled around the world mitigate this one idea. It's to simply extend the already existing Pan-American highway from Yaviza in Panama out to the Caribbean coast through the less delicate ecosystems and establish a ferry link with a road network over in Colombia. Another idea is to simply build giant bridges across the portions of the Darien Gap that are considered to be the most delicate. But in any case, building both of them was considered to be a huge danger for the workers and the ones that live there, but also the ones that drive over these highways and roads. That's because the environmental damage is still present and can collapse the entire highway system and kill dozens and dozens of civilians throughout the way. So it's all I can say about this Darien Gap and why it's impossible to build a highway system, and why most of the people has gone there by foot or passed them by air or by sea. So here's why it was impossible. It was simply because of the nature and ecosystem that it will be disrupted, the dangers, the diseases that can be potentially present, and most of all the harsh conditions to work there and the danger that it can cause to many people and many animals. Thanks for watching. That is all I have to say for now. Please subscribe, like and share, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.